Okay. Hey, everyone who's joining in. Nice to see you. See, we have some folks coming in. We're about to start our info session for the Art of Facilitation for Cooperative Groups online course taught by Laird Schaub, who we have with us here today. And my name is Cynthia. I'm one of the co-directors at the Foundation for Intentional Community, FIC, which is the organization that's helping to produce this course as well as many other courses at ic.org/learn. And today we're going to be talking with Laird all about the facilitation course. You'll have time to ask him your questions, find out all the info, find out if this is a good fit for you or not. And I'm going to get things started by sharing my screen. I have a short presentation to run through with you all. So here we are for the info session. And as I mentioned, this is an info session about the art of facilitation for cooperative groups, which is an online course, 5-week course that starts on March 11th. And we're actually offering this course in conjunction with another course that Laird is also going to be teaching immediately following the facilitation course. So right after the facilitation course, there's going to be this other 5-week course, Working Constructively with Conflict and Community. And actually, initially, when I approached Laird about doing a course, and I said, can you do something about, facilitation and conflict, group dynamics? And he's like, whoa, that sounds like more than one course. We really need two. So I'm trusting Laird here that he has such a wealth of knowledge to share with everyone about these two topics. Yeah, facilitation, and then what happens when things go wrong in community. So if you're thinking about taking the facilitation course, you might also consider taking the conflict course. And we're offering a really sweet discount when you do sign up for both courses. You get $100 off when you purchase the facilitation and conflict courses together. So it's a good deal, and I hope you'll consider it. Okay, briefly to talk about the structure of this course. So similar to all of our other online courses at FIC, this will be a 5-week long cohort course. So you're going to go through this course with a journey of other people who are also very interested in learning about facilitation and honing their group process skills. The course is going to run from March 11th to April 11th. And each week there's going to be a 2-hour live session. So a lot of online courses these days are pre-recorded, but for us, we feel it's so important to be able to do live class sessions on Zoom. So you'll each week be able to spend 2 hours of live session time with Laird, as well as there'll be homework assignments each week. We've created this amazing online student learning portal, which includes a forum for networking with other students in the course, getting your class assignments, getting the recordings of any classes you might have missed. So we're trying to create a private learning space for each course and for the cohort, so you can have time with Laird in between the sessions as well. And dedicated support. We have designed these online courses after launching our events program a year ago. And we've really envisioned this as a way that we can provide the people in our network with the best of the best teachers and support to help you, whether you're trying to facilitate a new community that's getting started, maybe it's a co-op or a team that's working on a project, whatever it may be, we want to help support you in having the skills you need to facilitate that situation with as much grace and ease as possible and help us all uplift cooperative culture. briefly to talk about the course schedule. So as I mentioned, each week there's going to be a 2-hour live class. You can see here the 5 classes. This is all on the course page in more detail, but I wanted to just give you a quick walk through. Each class is going to take place on Thursday, and it's going to alternate between 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern and 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern. And we're doing this alternating method to try to accommodate people from a variety of different time zones. So it might be that only half of these class times actually work in your schedule. That is okay. We're going to be recording each class and uploading it to the student learning area, so you'll have access, you won't miss anything. And I think Laird has laid out a really nice progression of topics through different aspects of what it means to be a facilitator for cooperative groups. In addition to those classes, each week we have what we're calling bonus sessions, which are our normal events program and events, workshops, panel discussions that we're running through FIC. You're going to get access to all of these sessions for free when you register for this course. You'll automatically be enrolled in each of these classes. We have some really nice ones. The first is going to be with Allison Ewald, who I believe Laird has worked with quite a bit in the past on facilitation trainings. And Allison's going to be focusing in on what you need to know about facilitation in the time of COVID. So I know many of you are restricted. We all are restricted in terms of how much face-to-face time we can get with our groups. So Allison's going to be really diving into how do you do effective facilitation via Zoom or another virtual platform. Then we have a nonviolent communication training with Terry, who some of you may have participated in her workshop that she gave on authentic relating a few weeks ago. So Terry's coming back and is going to do a deep dive on nonviolent communication. Then we have our normal monthly networking event. So you get to kind of network with the wider FIC community. And then lastly, we're going to have a consent-based decision-making training with Round Sky Solutions, which is a consultancy group that does a lot with cooperatives and teal or progressive organizations. And they're going to be offering this workshop on how you use consent-based decision-making and what that is, how it's different than consensus or not, like all of that they're going to get into. So that's the lineup for the program. And please do check out the course page if you have not already. If you're tuning in on Facebook, I'm talking to you, go to ic.org/facilitation-course. You can get a lot more information there. Plus, we have our scholarship application form. And we are really deeply committed as an organization to making the information we offer accessible to people of all walks of life, of all income streams. And so far, we've given out, I think it's maybe 30 or 40 scholarships to people who wouldn't be able to attend the course otherwise. And I know many of you who registered for today's info session also donated to our scholarship fund. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. And I hope to see you on this course. So that's about all I have. We're going to open it up here shortly to questions. I want each of you to think about, okay, what questions do I have? What do I want to ask Laird so I can determine if I want to sign up for this course? And I'll invite you to go ahead and either type your question into the chat box, or what would be even better is if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll see you and I'll call on you to speak so we can have a little dialogue and hear some more voices. While you're getting that going, I'll start off the question session, which with a question for you, Laird. And first to say, just really appreciating you offering this course and for all you've done for FIC over the years. For those of you tuning in, if you don't know, Laird was one of the co-founders and for many years served as the executive secretary for FIC. And I think he's had a big role in the reason that we're all here today. So thank you, Laird, and thanks for also sharing your all the knowledge you've gained over the years of working with intentional communities on facilitation, especially. Yeah, I've heard amazing things about your work, and glad to have you with us. Yeah. So, first question for you: who would you say this course is a really good fit for? Like, who is best suited to take this course?
I have a number of answers, actually. The first one would be people who are just curious about what is a comprehensive understanding of the role of facilitator. Even if you don't see yourself in that role, you want to see it used well and understood well by the groups that you're in. And so there's that group. Then there are people who are curious about the role and trying to decide whether or not that may be a good fit for them. So they may be at the front end of it. They may have had a little bit of experience and want to see whether or not this is an area they want to move into, perhaps in the group they are in. And then there's another group, which are people who have had a fair amount of experience with facilitation and want to deepen their skills so that they can be better servants where they serve, and in some cases even consider whether this is a professional line for them. So I work with people in all those angles. Now there's another angle on this, and that the skills needed, in my view, to be an excellent facilitator in cooperative settings matches up very well with the skills needed to be a good leader in cooperative groups. And so even if you don't see yourself with the title of facilitator in a lot of the context of the way you participate in your groups, you can gain an enormous amount of understanding group dynamics and how to fit in a leadership role in a healthy way by taking this course.
Awesome. Yeah, that is helpful to hear about the wide spectrum of different types of people this course would be applicable for. Okay, so I'm seeing we do have a few questions in the chat, some of which I can answer. So I did just put into the chat the cost of this course is $299. And that link I also put in ic.org/facilitation-course. You can find out more about the course there and all of the price and how to register, all of that information. And Elizabeth has asked, will the same additional bonus sessions be offered during the second go around of the facilitation course that's scheduled for the summer? And the answer is no. We'll be doing very likely a different round of bonus sessions. There will be bonus sessions, but there'll be different topics, different presenters, all related to facilitation. Like we really have a mind towards what is going to best complement what Laird is offering. But yeah, if you're especially interested in a particular bonus session, you're not going to take this course, you can always register for that bonus session separately, and that's just at ic.org/events. There you can see all of our normal event program and sign up for the events one-on-one. So I hope that answered your question, Elizabeth. Okay, and Chris has a question for you, Laird. Could you give a more rounded definition of facilitation? So we can all start off on the same page. And he's also asking, or they're asking, where
It's
does
she.
She, okay.
I know this person. It's
okay,
a she.
Great. So, and then also, where does facilitation occur in community?
Well, the formal answer is the person that runs the meetings, which would, in the context that I'll be teaching the course, I'll be thinking about meetings of the whole. But everything that I say would apply to team meetings as well, or even informal situations where if you think of facilitative skills, you can apply them informally all the time. I mean, in other words, helping people hear each other, understand each other, diffusing misunderstandings at an early stage. So there's a way, there's the sense in which the skills I teach in this course will only apply all the time. However, the specific will be running plenaries or meetings of the whole. Now, how I think of it is that this is life's work for me. I've been doing this for decades, and literally I've been to more meetings than you. I can promise you. I don't care who you are. I've been to a lot of meetings in cooperative settings now I'm talking about. And so this is a distillation of like, well, what works in the field? This isn't based on a lot of reading. It's just a lot of meetings and a lot of doing it and seeing what works and doesn't. And it's a very complex set. Just to frame this, you may think of a 10-hour course as very comprehensive. It's not in the sense that I teach facilitation in a 2-year course that's 24 days with students. You're getting a 10-hour distillation. You're getting 5% of the time with me that you would in the 2-year course. And it's gonna be packed, and we're gonna do a lot, and we'll do way more in a 10-hour course than we can in a 90-minute, or a 2-hour workshop. However, I want you to understand there's a lot to this field, and it's how to understand what basically, if I circle back to where I started of running a meeting, is how to understand what are the elements of a good meeting, what skills does a skilled facilitator need to ensure that happens. The facilitator should be the safeguard basically of the how of the group, and should be as neutral as possible as to the what. Trust the group to come up with the good answers. Your job, think of it as a midwife. You're trying to midwife a great meeting, and the baby belongs to the group, not you. And so you're trying to make sure it's a safe delivery and the baby's healthy and there's not undue labor. Okay, I'll stop.
I like that metaphor. That's a good one. Great. Okay, and let's see. Yeah, folks, feel free, ask more questions. Oh, I see we do have one from Deborah in the chat box. Okay, so I'll read this out loud. My community is falling into a trap of polarized conversations where people are arguing about the right solution to a problem. We need to step out of that arguing into creative problem solving. Is this something this course will provide strategies to deal with?
Absolutely. One of the important skills of a facilitator, and we'll work on this directly, is how to establish the right container for the right conversation. I mean, what kind of responses do you want from a group at certain points? And so two elements that'll relate to the dynamic you talked about. One is establishing early on in the conversation, before you get into specific solutions, what needs to be taken into account. And very often what you have when you get to what I'll call tug of war energy around which is the way to go with a solution, where there's an arguing back and forth, which is, I totally agree, you don't want to be in that dynamic, is because one side often thinks, no, we're thinking of what's best for the group and you're not, or some version of that, without having stepped back and realized what's probably true. And of course, I don't know your specific situation, but what I run into quite frequently is people are focusing on different aspects of what's best for the group. And the challenge is not who's right, but how do you balance the two concerns? Once you legitimize, okay, that, like, for instance, let me get more specific. Suppose somebody's talking about putting solar panels on the roof of the common house. Okay, and so on the one hand, there's a group value of ecological consciousness, and you could reduce your buying utility, your utility bills, and be more, have more green power, and that fits in with that value. On the other hand, you've got a value of affordability, and it's going to cost money up front to put these panels on the roof. You may get this money back in reduced energy bills later, but meanwhile, you got to pay for them to get them up on the roof. And some people feel like they're going to be priced out. And so there's a push me, pull me dynamic around, do we buy these panels or not? If somebody's focusing on ecological consciousness, they're all green light. If they're focused on affordability, they're like, wait a minute, I'm hanging on by my fingernails and you're pushing me off the edge of the cliff. It's like, where's your commitment to holding me? And so you can see where both are thinking about the good of the group, but they're focusing on different aspects. And so if you don't legitimize those two things as like, it's not a right and wrong. It's like, you're going to have to figure this out in a way that balances those two things. And you got to set up that conversation such that who's got an idea about bridging between these rather than who can say it again louder and hope that this time you'll convince somebody. Okay, I'll stop there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wow. I'm sure there's a lot more you could offer around how you do that. And I thank you, Deborah, for that question, because I know that we're living in really polarized times, and that shows up in intentional communities especially, and the opportunity in intentional community is we have a microcosm where we can really work with it and stick with it. And I think the kind of skills that Laird is offering are really critical to the success of a community. So next question. Okay, I see there's two folks with their hands up. I love when you raise your hand. That's awesome. So we're going to go first to BB Van Sant. Go ahead, and you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, it's just a quick question about the course itself. When we have the interactions on that 2-hour sessions, could you just go a little more detail into what those 2-hour sessions will be like?
Sure. And I can start, and I can let Laird also answer, because it is important to mention right now we're in Zoom webinar mode, but for the classes we'll be in meeting mode. And so you'll be able to see all of the other participants. We can put you into breakout groups, do more interactive things. So I just want to mention that about the actual layout of those sessions. And Laird, go ahead.
It'll be a mix, Barbara, the way I engage with the topic. So there'll be, for each of the 2-hour sessions, there'll be some handouts I'll send out to everybody ahead of time on what I want to focus on. And then you'll get to see those and develop questions or whatever. If, it's either something doesn't make sense or you're not sure where it goes. Then there'll be some exercises I'll give the group to work on. Some of this will probably be in breakouts, but it'll depend on what the nature is that I'm trying to get across. So there'll be something interactive in the way of practicing some of the skills that I'm trying to highlight. And then there'll be some teaching, there'll be handouts that'll be in written form, and there'll be some interactive stuff and time for questions. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for that.
Good question. All right, and now we'll go to Carmela.
Hi, I am not part of an intentional community or a cooperative, but have some long-term dreams of starting one with a group of people, and just curious and I'm also right now helping, doing some organizing work and starting grassroots organizing little community. So I'm curious if this would still be useful for me, for someone like me.
I think so very much. I'm inferring from what you've said, and I know it's just a little bit, Carmela, that you're intending to develop a kind of a cooperative culture among your organizing. Bringing people together, emphasizing inclusivity. Is that the right kind of sense?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and this will be very relevant.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Good.
What I want to highlight there, let me add a little bit more. This is billed as the art of facilitation and cooperative culture or community. I'm not sure what the word is, but the key is that all of this is slanted toward making a transition from the mainstream competitive culture, which is hierarchic and adversarial, into a cooperative culture where we're trying to be more inclusive and bring everybody along as we go forward, rather than who can aggregate the most power, the most votes, and decide that way. This is a very different animal, because in cooperative culture, you're trying to emphasize curiosity and have the least possible barriers to bringing people's input into play. It's not about how to control the outcome. It's like trusting the group that if we create this opening for all this stuff to surface, we'll collectively figure it out. And you're trying to reduce combat and increase curiosity. Now that's easy to say, it's just one sentence. However, actually unlearning competitive responses, especially when the stakes are high, is not a simple matter. And it is essential, in my view, that facilitators engage in this personal work, or it's not going to be pleasant. So I'm talking about moving into this other kind of culture and making that shift. I believe very strongly that that's a positive direction for the culture to go. And a lot of what motivates me to do the work I do today is trying to move us in that direction.
Great. Great. Thank you, Carmela, for that question, and Laird for your answer, because I definitely think it speaks to the heart of why we're doing this work and this training to, really emphasize and build cooperative culture for the wider culture and society. Yeah, great. Okay, folks, if you have additional questions, go ahead and put those into the chat or into the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand. If you're watching this on Facebook Live, you can go ahead and write into the comment section on Facebook. I'm monitoring all of these various channels you have to ask your questions, so go ahead, don't be shy. And yeah, okay. Well, if there's nothing for the moment, I have another question for you, Laird. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to your personal experience of facilitating facilitation and facilitation training. I know you've had decades of experience doing this work, but yeah, if you could just maybe speak to some of the groups that you typically work with, some of the situations you're typically brought into to help resolve or move through. Anything you can share about the highlights of your work and how it typically plays out.
Okay, well, I've been at this a while. I've got about 40 years of living in intentional community, almost all of it in a small income sharing farming community in Northeast Missouri. However, I have been working in the field of community networking and as a consultant to groups about cooperative group dynamics pretty steadily since 1987. So it's getting on to be about 35 years. And at this point, I've worked with hundreds of groups, and it's mostly intentional communities because that's where I'm best known, and I think that's the most complicated, most interwoven set of dynamics. I have the view that if you can navigate intentional community dynamics, you can do it anywhere, because that's the messiest as it gets. And that's very relevant because I've been able to also work occasionally with schools, churches, nonprofits, and this goes back to Carmela's point. Any kind of movement support thing where you're trying to do organize. I mean, that the experience is very relevant, translates easily into those other settings. So that's been a minority of my work, but it's certainly been included in that, where people see, oh, I've seen this guy in this setting, I think it might help in this other one, and that usually works pretty well. So I would say my work falls into two major categories. One of them is somebody feels that I know enough about an aspect of cooperative group dynamics that they would like to do training with me about, how to learn what I know or how to do what I teach. And then the other part is groups get in trouble. And then they say, okay, we're over our heads, or we've exhausted what we can do on our own, we need help. And there's a handful of I'm just one of a number of people that are out there available to do this kind of work. And so I get hired often to come in because there's a particular presenting stuckness in the dynamic, and groups want help with that. So and apropos, the second course, this is mainly billed as focusing on facilitation. And part of the skill set of a facilitator is working emotionally. You may have noticed that's one of the components listed in the 5 in there. And so we're gonna do a 2-hour segment that's focused on that thing in particular. And that's an introduction or a doorway into the second course, which is on conflict. I mean, emotional work is not just about conflict. That's the most volatile aspect of it. I want to teach the idea of groups are going to function best if they can open up to more than just best thinking, which tends to be a an import from the mainstream culture. It's really kind of idiotic when you realize that as human beings, we are far more than just our thinking. I'm not anti-thinking, but I'm pro opening the door into the other ways that we take information in, processes, and share it, which in particular includes emotional knowing or emotional intelligence, but it would also include intuitive or kinesthetic or spiritual. I mean, we're very rich as human beings. And the more you can learn to be, say, multi-tongued rather than speaking only in the single language of rational thought, then the richer the meetings and the more welcoming we are to people who know things in different ways. So in any event, this I'm gonna see, I'm trying to follow which thread I was going on here. I just that I have, my work often includes a conflict that's consuming and difficult for the group. I would say half the time when I'm brought in is there's a problem, there's something's on fire and they want me to come in and put it out. So now by that it means I don't mean put the person out, but to defuse the tension and try to figure out what healing could look like. And we'll touch on that more in the conflict course than in the facilitation course, but we'll touch on it in the facilitation course as well.
Right. And I think that does speak to the complementary nature of these two courses and how the facilitation is kind of like one of the foundational skill sets you need to be able to work with conflict in a constructive way. At least that's something I'm hearing from you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. What is one piece of advice, and maybe like the best piece of advice that you could give to a facilitator, especially someone who's just getting started with their facilitation? I know you just spoke to the multi-languages, multi-tongues, which I love, but yeah, what else could you offer to someone who's starting out as a facilitator?
I guess humility and courage. The humility to be open to learning. I mean, that in other words, even however you've gotten to wherever you are in life right now, you can learn more, and that I hopefully can help with that in this particular area. And yet, the courage to try and to be willing to ask questions when you're unsure. It's got to be a good facilitator. It has to not be about how good you look. It's how good you can help the group. And so that's a shift for a lot of us, and that's, if you can get to that place, then you've got the right start.
It's not about how you look; it's how you serve the group. I like that. Okay, Elizabeth asks, do you need to take the facilitation course before the conflict course? No, you do not. No, they're two separate standalone courses, and we're offering them together, but you can take them both separately. Would you say so, Laird?
I agree.
Yeah, nice. Okay, and we have another question from Deborah. And I'm gonna, there your hand went down. Okay, I guess not. Change your mind. And let me check over here to see if we have any questions coming in through Facebook. Okay, you have your hand up. There we go. I'm going to allow you to ask your question.
And here's my question. What are the advantages and disadvantages of being a member of the group that you're trying to be a facilitator to, in terms of being able to speak to their best selves?
Okay, well, very briefly, the plus side is, where the bodies lie. And I mean, the personalities in a deeper way. I mean, assuming you've got some, you didn't just move in, you've been there for a while. You have an understanding of what the quirks are, what, where people have blind spots, what are triggers for them. It's easier to navigate the shoals if you're a master of that particular estuary. However, if you're the other side of it is they know you, and there's prejudices they may have about you, or ways in which they won't accept you as a neutral facilitator, as an internal facilitator at times because of past relations or other experiences that didn't get digested or end well. And there's ways in which you can be compromised by the very knowledge that's an advantage. So that's the plus minus, I'd say.
Thank you.
Great. And it's funny because Jenna in the Q&A box asks a very similar question. You both had the same question top of mind. And Jenna asks, any thoughts or consideration for people who are facilitating within their own communities, in particular, balancing two roles, facilitator and community member? If you want to speak
Well,
more
a couple
on that.
thoughts are it generally serves a group very well if the facilitators form a cadre of people that meet regularly. Whether or not you're an official team doesn't matter so much as, that you're meeting and talking about your craft. And this helps in a couple of ways. One of them is you learn from each other. You can develop a closeness and ability to debrief. You can also complement each other. It's often effective um, if no one person's got all the skills you think you need for a particular topic to handle. I mean, you have the option of bringing in somebody outside, and sometimes that's the right choice. And we'll talk about that in the course. I don't need to drill down on that here, but you don't overlook the possibility of pairing people up as a team so that that is, let's suppose somebody's really good, I'm making up a story here, somebody's really good at following the thread of conversations and can hold complex things well and move things forward on the idea level, and the other person is really good energetically in reading undercurrents in the room, and they could play a role. Both need attending to, in my view, and if they can work out how to do both of those things together, where they have to coordinate who's in the lead at a given time, that can cover both of those needs, where you might not have one person who could do both. Or another, getting back to the comment I made earlier, is if you've got somebody who's a key stakeholder on a topic that's going to come up, and you would otherwise be a good facilitator for that topic, but that person doesn't like you for some reason, or doesn't feel like you're going to be neutral for them, then you may need a buddy to pair with who can take the lead during the segment where that neutrality might be called into question. And so that you can anticipate, how do I diffuse a potentially awkward situation by the sensitive pairing of people on specific topics. Now, all of that I said there, it presumes that you don't select facilitators for a meeting until you know the agenda. That's not every group's habit. Sometimes they say, okay, we got four people in the pool of facilitators. You do January meeting, and then you do the April meeting, and you do the July meeting, and you do this, you do the October meeting, and then you just rotate and you assign it all out so everyone knows, when they're on duty ahead of time. And I call that facilitator roulette. I mean, that's not a really smart way to do it. I'm not against planning. However, you need to know what the topics are so that you can sensitively safeguard your neutrality and the skill set needed to match up with the topics. And so in that sense, you need to hold back and make those decisions after you know what it is you're being asked to facilitate.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Actually, I was just reflecting how in our core staff team at FIC, I think we've been guilty of facilitator roulette, because we've been just every meeting we alternate who's going to be the facilitator. And I'm noticing now how having the agenda in place first would be really helpful. Are you going to talk about in the course at all, like facilitating meetings in particular, and touch on at all like agenda forming, or how to know when someone might be a good facilitator for a particular situation?
Absolutely. I mean, the context of this training is constantly going to be, I mentioned this before, but I'm underlining it here, is a meeting of the whole. That is, everything will be in that focus. I mentioned before, and I'm repeating here, that the application of what we teach is much broader than that, but that is the messiest, most complicated, most expensive item that groups have. When you bring everybody together for a couple hours, that's expensive. You want that time to be used well, and it can be messy, and I'm going to teach you how to do it well.
Okay, nice. Okay, so for everyone listening, think of this as your investment up front to save your group time and suffering down the road. Great. Okay, and I'm not seeing any other questions. So folks, please put your questions, if you have any additional ones, into the chat, into the Q&A. Go ahead, raise your hand. And again, if you're watching through Facebook, you can put your questions into the comment box. And I'll give it a few more minutes to see if anyone has anything else. Okay, Carmela has another question.
Yeah, so I was wondering, do you have some idea of how big the group might be, how big the cohort often is? And yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, we are capping the cohort at 45 people. We may or may not reach that number, but that's kind of the upper limit.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, good question. And I saw for a moment that Tak and Kate had their hand up, but now I'm not seeing. Oh, sorry, Tak and Linda. Are you two still wanting to? Yeah, there you go. Okay, I'm gonna let you. Okay, I'm gonna let you share here. Go ahead. We can see you too. That's nice. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
This question was actually the previous question. You talked about a meeting and having these preparations so that the meeting runs smoothly. But that brought to mind immediately the problem that I see, that sometimes when the meetings are so well crafted, then it's almost like a staged meeting. It's not a real meeting. Everything's done behind the scenes. If we're talking about a meeting of the whole, like our community really has very effective, efficient, we meet and then we're finished. But everything's basically almost always decided beforehand. Those decisions that need to be made, they're done in teams. Most decisions are made in the teams, not in the, so unless there's a lot of transparency of what's going on, it feels like for a member that everything's just kind of staged and then we vote on it and it's done. It didn't have anything to do with facilitation, so I'm really struggling to make my question here. But facilitating really live meetings, it's so important to have that the facilitator be really effective and not be like a part of a faction or something, recognized as part of one part of the community. I'm sorry, I can't get my question together.
I have a response, even if you're not sure what your question is. Let me see if it helps. I have a couple things. First of all, I'm wondering if decisions are made in teams, what is coming to the plenary? I don't understand. I mean, in other words, does the team not have authority to make that decision and it has to come to the plenary of the whole in order to actually be a decision? Is that the dynamic?
The dynamic I'm seeing is that the decisions are coming to the plenary and we can't really vote on them, or that let's yes, no. And so the real decision was made in the team. And
Okay.
Unless the whole community was available to work on that.
Right. Okay, so let me say a little more. And I want to note that the fifth element of this 5-part training is going to focus on this very topic of the right relationship between teams and the whole. And so what I want to say is it's important that the group be clear about what decisions need to be made in the whole group and what decisions can be made in teams. So if you get that clear, and then if a decision qualifies as it needs to be made in the whole group, then teams should not be working on solutions until the whole group has had a chance to define what the solution has to take into account. So there should be a meeting in the plenary to define that before proposals are developed. A lot of groups don't get to see a topic until there's already a proposal have been, and that is a potential solution has already been generated. And that's where the conversation starts. That's a mistake, I think. And so, and I'm trying to tell you why. I will go into more detail about it in the training component, but there's that element. And the other thing I wanted to say, relevant to what you shared, is that while I'm in favor of planning for meetings, it's not about planning for the outcomes. It's planning for the right questions or the right sequence by which the group engages. It's not trying to control what people say. It's trying to make them focus on a topic in a useful sequence, and then you need to work with whatever comes up. You're not trying to control that, except in the way it comes out, but not what is said, as long as it's germane to the topic. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful. And in our community, it's a consensus community, a so-called consensus community, and
there's a lot of those.
Yeah, and but we only do consensus at the plenary.
Okay.
We have very strict rules of what kind of consensus we do at the plenary, but most of the decisions are done in the teams. And the teams are not consensus. They're,
That's interesting. It's interesting that you allowed that. I'm not saying you can't, but it's an odd choice, because what happens is if the teams don't work by consensus, they're going to probably recapitulate style and a culture that's evocative of the competitive culture. And then you take that element and bring it into this cooperative, consensus-oriented meeting, and it's probably going to be a train wreck. However, if you have delegated to the team the authority to make decisions, then it shouldn't come back to the plenary. They should just announce their decision. If they don't have authority to do it, then my earlier comments apply. You shouldn't invest in solutions until if you've decided the decision has to happen at the plenary level, until the plenary has had a chance to define what it needs to take into account. So I'm repeating myself, but that's different than what you described you're doing. And I think that's part of your problem, where people feel like, oh, this is a done deal by the time it gets to the plenary. The train's already left the station, and all we can do is either jump on board or wave as it passes.
Yes, exactly. But so that means when the decisions are being made at the team level, there needs to be transparency there. We need to know, the community needs to know what that team is working on, so that people can bring their opinions.
I agree with you completely. And this is, again, something will be covered in the 5th component of this training.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for those questions. Good. And actually, Jenna has asked a similar or a good segue question in the Q&A box about if you'll be touching on different decision-making models or methods during the course.
This is not a training on consensus. I could do that too, but that's not what this is. However, I will touch on it. One of the components, one of the weekends, I'm sorry, not weekends, one of the weeks, one of the 2-hour segments will be on inclusivity, and I'll touch on it in that context. I'm a consensus trainer. I'm an advocate for it. I have deep experience in it. And I have a critique of a number of other options that are out there, why different people make different choices, what they get and what they lose or risk when they make them. So we'll have an opportunity to talk about it in that segment. I can't remember the number, whether that's number 4 or number 3, but it's on the list.
Okay, great. Yeah, and it is also worth mentioning, we've been thinking about in FIC of maybe doing a course on various decision-making methods, or maybe a panel where we have some experts who can piece out the different varieties of decision-making methods. So I know it's something people have been asking for, and we're thinking about the best way to share about this multifaceted topic. So we have about 10 minutes left, and we have a few more questions that have come in. So one question from Robin is asking about your view, Laird, your view regarding gender within intentional communities, especially in decision-making. So how do gender dynamics play out in decision making in your view?
Okay, it's a good topic. It's not simple. One thing I've observed, I mean, after decades of being in intentional community, is there's a concerted effort to try to be more to address societal imbalances that have favored men. And so there tends to be a culture in most intentional communities where assertiveness in women is supported, even to the point where if a man did the same thing, the woman would be celebrated and the man might be criticized. It's kind of a pendulum swing. That's my observation. So there's intentional community world is full of strong women. Now that doesn't mean all women are strong or all women are comfortable being assertive, nor it just means that there tends to be a lot of a jaundiced eye cast on assertive men, and in general, like go get them when women are out there. Now that, and so I can also say this is broad stereotyping tendencies, easy to think of counterexamples. Mostly women are better conditioned to be relational, and that's a very valuable skill in community. And men tend to be more conditioned to be focused on ideation and work with ideas. Both of those have advantages. The challenge is marrying them. In my experience, I would say, again, I'm speaking with broad strokes, that it's easier to teach somebody who's relational to work more aptly with ideation than it is to teach somebody who's good with ideas to be relational. And so what I tend to find is, like in my coursework, in terms of trying to study and understand cooperative group dynamics and be good at facilitating, it's 80% women. I think it's because they're more drawn to this work because they see the way they've been brought up fits better, or it's an easier a starting point to get into. This is something they already have a feel for, and they'd like to have understand the field more easily, and they adapt to it easier. Now, please understand, this is gross stereotyping. I'm just saying this is what I see. I mean, overwhelmingly, if we have a course, I mean, I'll be surprised if we have to start this course, and if we'll just see what the gender mix is, but I expect it to be 70 to 80% women.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Because that's what it usually is. I mean, I'm not a problem if it's the other way. I can work with men. It's all right. I sleep with one every night, right?
That's great. That's a good question. Thank you, Robin, for that. Okay, and another question we had in the Q&A box, because, you know, some people in this moment are thinking, do I sign up for the facilitation course and the conflict course? So I wonder if you could also speak to a little bit I mean, you've touched on it a little bit, but like what people could expect in the conflict course, you know, who might it be well suited for, just anything that gives people a sense for if they should also go on and register for the conflict course or not.
One of the major ways in which my teaching will differ from some others, like you can buy books on facilitation that don't talk about working emotionally. And it's like, I think you can't be good in this field without going into that territory. And that means, for many of us, that means working in territory we're unused to. Like, for instance, I was just speaking from my own journey. I would say by the time I was 21, I was probably pretty good at being able to work with ideas and complex ideas and be able to hold them and summarize. And that's an important skill. But I was totally naive emotionally. Or that is, I mean, me knowing my own feelings, understanding how to read what's going on in those around me and how to work with that, or how to integrate feelings and thinking. And so most of my work as an adult to get to be a better facilitator has been growing energetically and understanding and being more facile in that area. And so for many people, when I say that's a component, and I encourage you to go there, in the facilitation course, we're going to have a 2-hour segment where that's going to be the main focus. We're going to be constantly in that field in the conflict course. And so if you want to really develop yourself in that heat of the moment kind of situation, then the conflict course is going to do a lot more for you than what I can cover in one 2-hour segment in the facilitation course. So I'm really slanting it toward, all right, volatility, what does that moment look like? Knowing what your capacity is and how do you build it up to where you can actually be of service to your group in that dynamic moment. Explaining the theory is not hard. Actually being able to do it when all hell's breaking loose is another matter. And we'll be able to practice some things and try some things out in much more depth in the conflict course than I can cover in the 1-2 hour segment in the facilitation course.
Okay, nice. It's nice to know there'll be some practice involved in that course,
Oh, yeah.
especially. Great. Okay, yeah. And I suppose it's also worth mentioning for people, you probably don't need to be presently in a conflict situation to find this course valuable, that there's a lot you can do to learn the skill ahead of time so that when conflict comes up in your community or your group, which it probably will, you're prepared. Would you say so?
Yeah, don't wait for the volcano to erupt.
Yes. That's good advice. Wonderful. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions. And we are at time almost. So, oh, now I do see a level. Okay. Just reading what Robin has put in to the chat. Okay, well, I feel like you did touch on this question. This will be the last question here. Robin is asking about what level of task within a working group needs to be interrogated by whole group. And I think you've said that's the course number 5, or the class number 5 is going to dive into this in a lot more detail than you can probably answer in a few minutes.
Well, I mean, the quick answer is like whatever the group wants. I think in general, a good theory is to delegate out to teams the authority to make decisions that are binding on the group as far as you can stand, but do it deliberately and with a lot of clarity about what the boundaries are within that, so that if the group is in the boundary, they're allowed to make decisions and announce it. And I don't want to bypass what Tak said earlier around part of the mandate to teams should include clarity about opportunities for people not on the team to be able to come and give comments about topics that the team's going to be dealing with, so that it's not just a surprise when decisions come out, and that they have a reasonable chance to have their input included. However, and then if it's, or if there's questions about whether or not something is in or out, then it has to come back to the group for clarification. If you do not allow teams to make decisions and everything has to come back to the plenary to be rubber stamped or approved, it tends to be very demoralizing for the teams. And it doesn't take much reflection to realize there's a certain level of detail where it's just silly to be asking the whole group to deal with. If somebody's at the Common House team and they're trying to decide what color to paint the bathroom, do you really want the plenary deciding that? I mean, I think I'm trying to get to the silly level of like, let the team decide, as long as they use non-toxic paint and keep the cost within a certain budget level, let them choose. And then everybody who's a color zealot can get involved with that, and they can have a paint fight and decide among themselves which color wins. But there's a lot of people who don't want to be in that conversation because it's really not worthy of the whole plenary. So you have to decide with some sensitivity, when does something rise to the level the whole group needs to have a say, and when can the team decide?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Good. Okay. Well, thank you, Laird. I feel like we got a lot of the insight into facilitation just within this time. And thank you, everyone, for all of those great questions as well. Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you during this course. I feel like we're really lucky to have you.
Okay.
Yeah, good. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to put the link to the course into the chat. So you have that there. You can go to that page, check it out once more. And if you have any additional questions, I'm going to put an email address into the chat as well, connect@ic.org. that's the best way that you can reach me. And if you have any additional questions, any concerns, hesitations, I'm happy to help you out. So that's all we got. And thank you. Thank you once again to everyone coming, and thank you, Laird.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. Take care.